Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this fantastic Friday afternoon. I have survived finals week, and I'm sure actually a lot of other college students have survived finals week, so yay, we're on vacation now. It's fantastic, but while vacation has started, I still have to do this and I still got to talk about sports. And I like doing this. I definitely like talking about sports. So, in this first segment, we are going to be talking about the Thursday night football game. Just, recapping Thursday night football, just my overall thoughts on the game and things like that. Then in the second segment, we're going to talk about Bronny James yet again, but this time he actually had a great game in the G League. I told you guys that this would eventually happen. You just had to give him time, and here we are. So I'll cover a little bit, I'll go deeper into that in the second segment. Then in the third segment, we're going to talk about the Dolphins releasing Odell Beckham Jr. and sort of the implications and what that could mean, how he's been playing. He hasn't really been playing good, spoiler alert. But then in the fourth segment, we're going to shift over to the NBA, and we're going to take a look at the updated MVP ladder. I already looked at it. I already know who's leading, who's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, all that stuff. So we're going to talk about that and my thoughts on that. And we also have a special fifth segment at the end of the fourth segment, so be sure to stay tuned if you guys are interested in figuring out what that is. Before I begin, I would like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether it's a hot take, whether it's a burning question, or whether it's just something you're dying to share. We are all ears. If you really want your comment and your question to get noticed, I recommend using Super Chat. You click on the $ below the chat box and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. If Super Chat's not really your thing, then you can always use the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment, gsmcpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. They really help the show, make it much more interactive between myself and you guys. So with that out of the way, let's go right ahead, get into this first segment. Give me 1 second so I can go ahead and present my slides. And all right, so this game between the Rams and the Niners, it was very boring. It was a very, very boring game, and it was a very ugly game played by both sides. The final score of this game was 12-6. It was absolutely awful. It was disgusting to watch. Nobody played really well in this game. And Brock Purdy, he ended the game with 14 completed passes out of the 31 he attempted. He also threw an interception, which ultimately costed the game for the Niners at the very end. And just give me 1 second. Let me just pull up the rest of these stats because they're not loading. And then on the other side for the Rams, Matthew Stafford, he ended up completing 16 of the 27 passes that he's thrown. No touchdowns, no interceptions. But again, none of these quarterbacks were able to get more than 200 yards. And it was an awful game. It was such a boring game. The only real highlight of the game in this, the only real highlight to talk about in this game was linebacker Devondre Campbell quitting on the Niners mid-game. I don't know why he quit. He has a history of doing this, actually. He really just bails on his team from time to time. Very selfish, in my opinion. And again, the coach wasn't happy about this. Kyle Shanahan wasn't happy. One of his own players wasn't happy about it either. So I would not be surprised if Devondre Campbell ends up getting cut effective immediately. Probably during this podcast, I would not be surprised if he ends up getting cut real soon, because that is just inexcusable. I mean, quitting on your own team in the middle of a game, not only is that just completely selfish, but it's that's practically against the rules and the fundamental rules of football. You always want to try and win, and it doesn't matter whether something's not going your way, whether you're not it really depends on the situation. It doesn't matter whether or not something is going your way, whether you're unhappy. You always try to win the game in the end, and he broke that fundamental rule. This is if you want an NBA comparison, this is similar to when Scottie Pippen ended up quitting on his team in 1995 when he wasn't taking the final shot and Phil Jackson decided to write up a play for Tony Kukoc. And of course, it backfired on Pippen because Kukoc ended up making that clutch shot to win the game in the end in the playoffs, and quitting mid-game, like when we're talking about Scottie Pippen, that was really the big difference maker between Michael Jordan and Scottie. Scottie just was not a leader like that. And I mean, like, Michael Jordan would never ever quit on his team. Obviously, Michael Jordan wouldn't be put in that situation because everyone knows who's going to take the final shot when Michael Jordan is on the team. But still, he would have never quit. He would never have quit on the team like that. I mean, when in '91, when Michael Jordan was playing against the Lakers, Phil Jackson was like, pass the ball a little bit more, and eventually he started giving the ball to Paxson, and Paxson started making some shots. I mean, Michael Jordan, he just wanted to win. That was the only important thing that really mattered to him. And in this instance right here, quitting on your team, I just can't really stand it. But that's really the big story of this game. Nobody played well in this game, except for Kyron Williams, who ended the game with 108 rushing yards on the ground. And on San Fran's side, nobody played well in this game at all. Deebo Samuel has been absolutely awful as both receiver and as a running back. He has the most drops as a receiver in this season, I believe. He is indeed struggling. And Cooper Kupp put up one of the most Tony Snell stat lines in NFL history. If you guys don't know that reference, Tony Snell, in one of the games that he played, I think he played like around 20 plus minutes in a basketball game, and he recorded absolutely zero stats in every single category. 0 points, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks. He was basically just running up and down the court. And Cooper Kupp last night ended up getting 0 receptions, 0 yards, and 0 touchdowns, while running at 4.69 miles per hour. This is literally a Tony Snell stat line. But the game as a whole, like I said, it wasn't really all that impressive to watch. I mean, here's the play-by-play. So this just to show you how boring this game was. So it started with San Fran punt, LA punt, and then the 49ers, they ended up making a field goal to make the score 3-0 early in the first quarter. Then after that, it was right back to LA punt, San Fran punt, 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 and then finally the Rams decided, oh, you want to shoot threes? I could shoot threes too, and they made a field goal to tie the score 3-3, and then it was back to San Fran punt, LA punt. Then the Niners, they ended up go ahead and making a field goal to make the score 3-6. And then the Rams answered right back with a 17-play, 65-yard field goal drive. And guess what happens next? You guessed it. San Fran punt. And then the Rams, they responded with a field goal and to make the score 9-6. And then, this is with the game on the line. San Fran had a golden opportunity to take the lead late in this quarter. It's the fourth quarter, by the way. And guess what Brock Purdy does? He throws the ball in the end zone to the defense. And that ultimately allowed the Rams to go ahead and chew the rest of the clock and go on a game-winning field goal drive, or a game-sealing field goal drive, I should say, and make the score 12-6, and that was the end of the game. A lot of punting in this game. Very, very boring. Very boring. A lot of three-pointers in this game. Field goals, if you will. I like to call them three-pointers. Very, very, very boring. I expected the Rams to win this game, but I did not expect this game to be such a boring game. I didn't expect there to be such low scoring. I mean, this is a game that ultimately decided who was going to end up leading in their conference. Now the Rams have a tiebreaker. Assuming that they end up getting the same record as San Fran, they hold the tiebreaker, which means they ultimately have the higher place in the seeding category. And now the Niners are dead last in their division. Was about to sneeze. That was weird. There's the sneeze. Apologize for that. But the Rams, right now, they sit at an 8-6 record. The Seahawks, they have to play this Sunday, I believe. excuse me. Yes, they're going to play the Packers this Sunday, and assuming things go well for them, then they're going to continue leading their division in the NFC West. But if things don't really go so well, then the Rams would end up being the number one seed in their division because they hold the tiebreaker at the moment. And the Niners being dead last in their own division is something that I definitely did not expect. But this is just, the way I see it, this is really the Madden curse. I'm sure some of you guys really know what the Madden curse is. So essentially, whenever a athlete in the NFL is the cover athlete for the next Madden game, their team ends up underperforming. And in this case, it was Christian McCaffrey, and Christian McCaffrey has barely played enough snaps in this game, or in this season, excuse me, and San Fran is struggling, and they're dead last in the NFC West. Granted, the NFC West is very, very competitive, and, rather competitive, considering how they're still all fighting for a home wild card playoff spot. And we'll see how it goes in the end, but right now this is not a very good look for San Fran. And this game is really not helping the Brock Purdy isn't a system quarterback narrative. And Brock Purdy does, the narrative that's going around is that Brock Purdy needs Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, all of these fantastic players at their position, Brandon Ayuk, in order to effectively win games. And while I'm not going to say that Brock Purdy is the reason why they lose games, he's also not necessarily the reason why they're he's not really doing anything to sort of help this team win in certain situations. His stats, they look pretty solid for what he's got, but at the end of the day, you're losing games. And it really doesn't matter at the end of the day until if you're winning, that's when the stats really matter. But if you're losing, then that's just a completely different story. But it's not really helping out his narrative of being a competent quarterback in this league. And as for, I should also mention that Puka Nacua actually played pretty solid in this one with 7 receptions and 97 receiving yards on 8 targets. So not entirely bad, but again, most of this game was incredibly boring. Let me know in the comments what you guys thought of this game, if you guys saw this game. If you didn't, then God bless you because you missed a snooze fest of a game. But honestly, the big highlight of yesterday was this second segment that's coming up, which is Bronny absolutely taking over in the G League and dropping 30 points. Yes, Bronny dropped 30. We're going to talk about that right after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned if you guys are interested.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to talk about Bronny James and his incredible performance in the G League. Before I begin, I would like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether it's a hot take, whether it's a burning question, or if it's something you're dying to share. We're all ears. If you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. It really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. And if Super Chat's not really your thing, you can always use the link displayed below the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net, to send in your comments and or donations that way as well. It really helps the show, makes it much more interactive between myself and you guys. So with that out of the way, we can go ahead and talk about this fantastic performance from Bronny. This is the first time where I'm actually going to be speaking, talking about Bronny when he's actually playing really well. I mean, he was the talk of the draft, probably one of the most, actually not probably, definitely the most popular second round draft pick in the entirety of the NBA. And primarily because he is the offspring of LeBron James. Despite being the offspring of LeBron, he didn't really play like LeBron in the NBA, or even in the G League up until now. Last night, Bronny James ended up dropping 30 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, 57% from the field, 33% from 3, 50% from the line, all in 25 minutes. Just round of applause for Bronny right there. Fantastic game. I told you guys that it would just take a minute for Bronny to end up developing, and here we are. I mean, you always have to give these rookies a time to develop. Granted, I understand it was a G League, but let me put it this way. I didn't see LeBron drop 30 in the G League. Did you? I never seen LeBron drop 30 in the G League. Already, Bronny has done something that LeBron James hasn't done. Hall of Fame. Put him in the Hall of Fame already. Jokes aside, though, he actually ended up scoring 30 points before Joel Embiid was able to play 6 games in this season. That is a very ridiculous stat line that is actually very true. Whether it is... honestly, most of it is because Joel Embiid is just, I don't know what's going on with Embiid and why he doesn't want to play, but it's like he really doesn't want to play basketball, it seems like it. But I knew this would happen. Eventually, it would come. The genes are finally kicking in, and Bronny is finally playing like the offspring that everyone expected him to play. And this is the expectation for him. Like, I don't know what people really expected, and I don't know why people were giving him such a hard time. He is a second round draft pick for a reason, and chances, like, a lot of people, they like to clown him for like, you know, being demoted to the G League, but like, that usually happens to second round draft picks. They end up getting demoted to the G League until they're ready for the NBA. That's just what happens. And it was just put on the spotlight because, you know, this is LeBron James' son. And so in the 7 games that Bronny played in the NBA, he's averaged 0.6 points per game and 2.6 minutes per game. Very, very bad, obviously. But his jersey sales are through the roof. I mean, he has let me see. Yeah, that's $50 million in jersey sales. Bronny, $50 million. Despite the stats that he is producing, he is by far, like, he is just tearing it up in jersey sales. Probably, like, the richest 0.6 per game scorer in jersey sales ever recorded. So, I can only imagine how much more they're going to skyrocket after this game. I mean, like, $50 million. Like, that is a lot of money. That is crazy amount of money. That is actually more money than the amount of money he's making in his contract. Like, that's really impressive. But aside from that, you know, this is really the big news of the game. I mean, him dropping, anyone dropping 30 in the G League wouldn't really go under anyone's consideration. But because it is Bronny, this is the talk of the town right now. And, I mean, is it coincidental that when LeBron James doesn't play, Bronny ends up playing really well? Because these last few games LeBron has missed. He's missed 2 games already. And he said he was going to play every single game in the NBA. It doesn't really seem like that's happening, whatever reason that is. There are some allegations going around that somebody that I don't want to name is involved in the reasoning for why he is not playing. I'm not going to mention that. You guys can go ahead and Google. I'll give you guys a hint. It starts with a D. And he's in jail. So that's the only hint that I'm giving you guys. But those were some alleged reports. I'm not going to talk about that. But again, Bronny, fantastic performance from him. Whether he's going to play in the NBA, not entirely sure. I think he's still going to be stuck in the G League until he shows some consistency. But as of right now, it's not really looking all that bad. I mean, the last game that he played, that wasn't him dropping 30. He ended up dropping 16 points on, let me just look at the box scores real quick, because I only really paid attention to the points that he dropped in the last game that he played. He ended up dropping 16 points, ended up getting 4 rebounds, 2 assists, as well as, let me see. Yeah, 4 rebounds, 16 points, and 2 assists in that game. And again, these performances so far, these are all in like under 30 minutes. So he's showing some sort of consistencies. We'll have to see, how consistent he actually can be, whether or not he's going to move up all the way back to the NBA in the roster. He primarily sits on the bench and, just gets that NBA experience, gets to sit courtside with his father. Very rarely, because, LeBron never, ever, ever gets subbed out. It's very rare that LeBron gets subbed out. I mean, he plays almost 40 minutes a game, and he's 40 years old. So we're just going to put that out there. But that's all that I really have in this second segment. Again, not really much to talk about. It is a G League game, so it's not really all that interesting, aside from the fact that he ended up scoring 30. And I also have some other segments lined up that are probably going to take a little bit longer, so I do want to preserve time and be a little bit mindful of that. So in the third segment, we're going to talk about Odell Beckham Jr. He has just recently been released from the Dolphins, and we're just going to go ahead and talk about that right after the short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we're back with the third segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be talking about Odell Beckham Jr. getting released from the Dolphins. And we're just going to go right into this segment and no wasting time. So it was a mutual agreement. Sources have confirmed that it was a mutual agreement that both Odell and the Miami Dolphins wanted nothing to do with each other anymore. Odell Beckham Jr., he ended up missing both practices this previous week. And this week, and he described it as personal reasons. He signed a 1-year, $3 million deal with the Dolphins in May. It was going to end up being worth $8.25 million with incentives, but he had knee surgery earlier in the offseason and started the season on the physically unable to perform list. Now, the Finns, they were well aware that Odell Beckham Jr. was most likely not going to be ready at the start of the season when they agreed to a deal, so that's not really the reason why they ended up getting rid of him. He made his first practice debut in the first week of October and played his first game against the New England Patriots in Week 5. Now, in the 9 games that he's played in this season so far, Beckham finished with only 9 catches for 55 yards. Very, very lackluster considering how this is Odell Beckham Jr., and he was so good as a rookie. I would know. I'm a Giants fan. I miss him so much. I mean, one of the fastest players to record as many yards as he did, and the only players that have done it faster were, I believe, Justin Jefferson and There was one other player that I'm just completely blanking on right now, but I do know that Justin Jefferson ended up receiving more yards in his first 3 years faster than Odell Beckham Jr., albeit with one more game, one extra game that Justin Jefferson was able to play in that season. But regardless, Odell Beckham Jr. in his rookie campaign and in the 3 years with the Giants was absolutely beautiful. Now, in his fall from grace, it was like, I can't believe it. It's just another player that has been, that had his career ruined because of injuries. I was very happy that he ended up winning the Super Bowl with the Rams when he did. But unfortunately, he wasn't able to even finish the game despite catching a touchdown in that game because he got hurt. And it's just really, really sad. Now, he also didn't really benefited playing with the Miami Dolphins that much because at around this time, Tua Tagovailoa ended up getting hurt as well. And, the quarterback play with the Dolphins without Tua is just absolutely awful. Now, Tua isn't, in my opinion, he's not a great quarterback, but clearly he is valuable for the Dolphins. They seem to win with Tua Tagovailoa. And it's not like Odell Beckham Jr. is the only wide receiver who is playing really, really bad this season. I mean, Tyreek Hill, the player that was considered to be the best player in the entirety of the NFL last season, he's been awful. Like, just a complete plummet in Tyreek Hill's stats. In fact, let's go ahead and look at his stats right now, because I remember last season, Tyreek Hill, he had 1,700 receiving yards, well over that actually. And for 2 years in a row, he ended up recording 119 receptions and getting 1,700 yards or around that mark. And now in this season, Hill only has 65 receptions and only 769 yards. And on top of that, only 5 touchdowns. So not a very good season for Tyreek Hill, and not a very good season for Jaylen Waddle either. At least in my opinion. I mean, Jaylen Waddle compared to what he was last season, he was another receiver that ended up recording 1,000+ yards and 70+ receptions. But in this season, he has almost 20 less receptions and almost 300 less yards. Granted, excuse me, that is all subject to change. Maybe he can just completely pop off in the next few games, but the receiving core has not been nearly as explosive as it was in the previous few seasons. Excuse me. That might be because, Tua Tagovailoa didn't really play well. He not really play well, but he didn't really play all that much. He missed 4 games with a concussion, and Miami has won 4 of its last 5 games, entering its Week 15 game against the Houston Texans. But they're 6-7 overall, so not really all that. They need to end up winning way more if they want any hopes of making it to the playoffs, and they have to win it consecutively, and they can't drop a game. But this is, it's just a fall from greatness with Odell Beckham Jr. And which team is going to be open to grabbing him? You guys already know which team I hope gets him. Please, 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 Giants, bring Odell Beckham back. It doesn't matter how bad he is. I do not care. I want him on the team. I just want him for the nostalgia. He was the reason why I became a Giants fan. The biggest reason why I became a Giants fan was because of this man right here. Yes, I did see the 2 Super Bowls that the Giants won with Eli Manning, but I wasn't really that big on football at the time. I was still rather young. My focus, I really liked basketball a little bit more. But then as the years went on, and when Odell Beckham Jr. made that ridiculous one-handed catch over the Cowboys, I was like, yep, that's my team. I like that guy. Because, he straight up changed an entire generation. I mean, kids everywhere in the backyard during my childhood, when they saw Odell Beckham Jr. make that catch, everyone for years, they were saying, Odell me. Just throw the ball up high, and they were going to try and catch the ball with one hand. Probably, actually not probably, the greatest catch, the best catch in NFL history. I do not care That is the best catch in the history of the NFL. Let me know in the comments if you guys think that that is the best catch in the history of the NFL. Maybe you guys think that there is a better catch than that. Maybe a catch that has like some significant value in playoff success and determined whether or not a team ended up winning a playoff game or whether or not a team ended up winning a Super Bowl game, this, that, and the other. I think that that was the best catch that I've ever seen. Just doing this, absolutely ridiculous. But that's Odell for you. I want him on the team. Now, whether or not I don't really expect him to, I don't expect him to play all that well, but the season's already over. And the Giants, they're not really competing for much. The only thing that they're really competing for is a higher pick in the draft, so that way they're able to land either Shador or Cam Ward. I swear to God, if they do not get either of those quarterbacks, I'm going to riot. But aside from the fandom, I really want him on the team. Again, they're not really fighting for much, so it wouldn't hurt to sign Odell Beckham Jr. and pair him up with Malik Neighbors. Maybe Odell Beckham Jr. can, not Odell, but maybe Malik Neighbors can learn a couple of things from Odell and go through the mentorship in that way. And not only that, I would love to see Odell Beckham Jr. get some snaps. And when you give him a chance, like when you give Odell a chance, he can perform. He can ball. The Rams, they gave him a chance. They already proved that he can ball. Granted, maybe now it's a little bit too late for that because maybe the injuries have already caught up to him. He's had a lot of them. But regardless, I still want him on the team. I still want him there just for nostalgia purposes. And it's not like the Giants are going to be losing much. I mean, actually, they're going to be losing a lot, but it's not like they're really fighting for much. It's not like adding him would ultimately detriment the team, or it's not like adding him is like, why would you add him to the roster? Like, why would you ever bring him back? Like, we know why the Giants would bring him back, because he played with them before. And I quite frankly don't want him out of a job as of right now. I would really, really, really like him to play for the Giants one more time, at the very least. And other Giants fans also agree with that. I mean, a lot of I was looking over on X, formerly known as Twitter, and a lot of Giants fans, they really were open to the idea of just bringing Odell Beckham Jr. back, just reliving the nostalgia, because everyone loves him. Every single New York fan loves Odell Beckham Jr. And how could you not? He was fantastic when he played with the Giants. In fact, I keep saying that he's fantastic, but I don't bring up the stats, so I might as well go ahead and bring up his stats in his first few seasons, because I'm sure a lot of you diehard football fans already know his stats by heart. I'm not one of those people, despite the fact that I am a Giants fan. I know it's a little bit embarrassing, but besides, I was young at the time. Like, I was still in middle school. There was no way I was going to remember something that I was in middle school for. But in his rookie season, he only played 12 games, and he ended up recording 1,300 receiving yards with 91 receptions. In the year after that, he recorded 1,450 yards and 96 receptions. And then in the year after that, when he started 16 games, he ended up recording 101 receptions and 1,367 receiving yards. And in every single one of those seasons that I just mentioned, he ended up getting 10 or more touchdowns. He was that guy. He was him. Like, there was nothing that was stopping him aside from injuries. And even in, even in his return, from injury in 2018, he still ended up putting up 1,000+ receiving yards and not as many touchdowns, but still. 77 receptions and 1,000 receiving yards are stats that a lot of wide receivers would kill for in today's NFL. He had a brief stint with the Browns, and I mean, whether you want to blame it on Baker Mayfield or whatever it is, whatever was going on over there, he didn't really play that well in the second season with Cleveland, ultimately ended up forcing his way out and winning a Super Bowl with the Rams. I'm so happy that he ended up winning a Super Bowl, because we all know there was no way he was going to win a Super Bowl on the Giants. No. And for the Giants in his career, he ended up recording 44 touchdowns, 5,476 receiving yards, and 390 receptions. He was that guy. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But I really hope the Giants get him. I hope they do, just for nostalgia purposes. But with that out of the way, that's all that I have in this third segment. You know, it's unfortunate that the Miami Dolphins decided to part ways with him, but we'll see if he ends up getting landed on a team, or if a team is going to try and pick him up. So now we're going to go into the fourth segment where I talk about the NBA's MVP ladder. They recently just released an update for the players in the top 10, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at those players right after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we're back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to be looking at the updated NBA MVP ladder. They recently released this, I believe, maybe like around an hour ago, something like that. So we're going to go ahead and look at the players that are on this list. And we're going to dive right in, actually. Obviously, number one is Nikola Jokic. There is absolutely zero excuse for him to not be number one. Everyone knows his ridiculous value, and everyone knows what he does on the Denver Nuggets. He is a triple-double machine, and simply put, without the Denver Nuggets, they would not have the record that they have. They sit now 12-10 in the Western Conference. Not a very good record. In fact, it's while it is a winning record, it is, in terms of for Western Conference standards, it's really bad. But we know that Jokic is incredibly valuable. When he's on the court, the Denver Nuggets have the best offensive rating, the best net rating, the best field goal percentage, the best three-point percentage, and the best assist-to-turnover ratio. When he's off the court, they have the worst of every single one of those stats that I just mentioned. So, literally, without Nikola Jokic, this Denver Nuggets team would be nothing. I wouldn't be surprised if they would be worse than the Detroit Pistons or the Washington Wizards without Jokic. A team that they ended up losing to with Jokic on the roster after Jokic had a ridiculous triple-double performance, being the third player in NBA history with at least 56 points, 16 rebounds, and 8 assists in a game. And he lost. He's the only player to do that in a losing losing effort. The only other two players to have a similar stat line to his are Luka Doncic and Elgin Baylor. Luka Doncic did this on the 27th of December when he dropped 60 points, 21 rebounds, and 10 assists, and the Mavs ended up winning. Elgin Baylor did this all the way in 1959, 64 points, 17 rebounds, and 8 assists along with that. And I'm pretty sure that in that year, Elgin Baylor was serving in the military, and they still ended up winning that game. Jokic dropped a similar stat line like this. It wasn't 60 points, but again, 56 is 56. And they lost. And they lost by a wide margin, too. That is inexcusable to lose to the worst team when Jokic is putting up a stat line like this. And there's really, at least for me, there's no argument for who the best player in the NBA is right now, and there's no argument with who the most valuable player in the NBA is right now, and that is Nikola Jokic. There is an argument, though, on who should be the runner-up. As of right now, the NBA updated the MVP ladder, and they say that Giannis is right now the second in the MVP ladder, just below Nikola Jokic. And while I do agree that Giannis Antetokounmpo is the second best player in the NBA, you guys know I'm a big fan of Giannis, and I think very highly of him. He is just as efficient as he is dominant, and he's averaging 32 points per game, I believe, and shooting around 60% from the field. Those are very, very good stat lines. However, I don't think he should be higher in the MVP polls and in the MVP ratings over somebody like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. context is very important when we're talking about MVPs. Team record is also very important when we're talking about MVPs. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the Oklahoma City Thunder, they have a 19-5 record, and they are leading the entire Western Conference in wins. They are the head of the entire conference. There is absolutely no reason why Giannis Antetokounmpo should be ranked higher in the MVP standings than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And it's not like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is having a bad year either. He's averaging 30 points per game, 5 rebounds, 6.3 assists per game, all the while shooting 56% on effective field goal percentage, 51% from the field, and let's see, I believe he started shooting way more threes this year than he did last year, but still he's averaging roughly around the same three-point percentage at 34%. So very, very efficient, and not only that, this performance and these kinds of performances from him are giving the Thunder wins. Not to mention the fact that the Thunder aren't even a completely healthy team as of right now because they still don't have Chet Holmgren, who's been sidelined with a very major injury. So the fact that this Thunder team is 19-5, still leading the Western Conference, and the Western Conference is incredibly difficult, as I've said many times, and he's only third in MVP voting behind Giannis Antetokounmpo, I don't agree with that at all. The Bucks, they are 6th in the Eastern Conference, and even being 6th in the Eastern Conference, that's actually really bad because his team has only won 13 games, and they've lost 11 of them. They had a really rough start in this season, and I understand that, with the winning streak and the recency bias, Giannis is going to be a favorite, but he should not be a favorite over Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Like, MVPs, you have to take winning into account. That is what determines value when you're looking at a player who is the most valuable player in the entirety of the NBA. Like, obviously, I have no problem with Jokic being ranked at number 1, despite the fact that he's also a low seed and in the same conference as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. The difference between Jokic and Giannis, in my opinion, is the fact that, without Giannis, the Bucks are going to be nothing. Like, that's for sure. Same way how without Jokic, the Denver Nuggets aren't a competent team. But you could also say the same about the Thunder, who they aren't a competent team without SGA. And you could also, the argument for Jokic is that, these stat lines are completely otherworldly. And just the fact that this team goes from being the best when Jokic is on the floor to the worst when Jokic is off the floor, that implements value. That shows that there is a lot of value in Jokic's game. And it's not necessarily like it's just empty stats. But again, the win category is very, very important to me. And I think a lot of these rankings, they're very much sleeping on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of this, whether or not you guys agree that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is being slept on, or whether or not you think Giannis should be in the top 2 for MVP conversation. I personally don't. He's also playing in a weaker conference, so that's also another reason, but that's besides the point. So next in the MVP ladder is Jason Tatum. Makes a little bit of sense. I can see why Jason Tatum is going to be this high in the MVP ladder. The Celtics, they're 20-5. They're 1 win short of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and they've been obviously they've been a well-oiled machine. They're just like that. The Boston Celtics are just like that. And with the roster that they have, it makes sense that they're just like that. But again, MVP is usually the best player on the best team, and that's what Jason Tatum is. And it's not like Jason Tatum doesn't have the stats to prove it. He's averaging 28 points per game, 8.9 rebounds, 5.7 assists, 54% shooting in effective field goal. Now, the individual field goal percentages, like 45% from the field and 36% from 3, they aren't on par to SGA. But regardless, I don't really have that much of a problem with Jason Tatum being ranked this high in the MVP polling. Obviously, he's not going to win it. I don't think he's going to win the MVP, especially with the team that he has, because that's really the big argument with Jason Tatum. It's like, sure, he is the best player on the best team, but this is literally the best team. You can go no wrong with this team, having Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, Derek White, and Kristaps Porzingis all in the starting lineup, it's definitely going to make you play like you are the best player in the league, like without a doubt. So I can see the argument for why a lot of people don't want Jason Tatum winning the MVP, especially when Jokic is breaking records and doing ridiculous things while his team is like lacking. Like there's a very clear cut like just the value. Like if you take Jason Tatum off of the Celtics would still be a playoff team. And if you take Jokic off of the Nuggets, then the Nuggets, they would be probably the worst team in the entirety of the NBA. And that's really the big difference maker in these in the value department. Now, the next player in the MVP ladder, someone that I'm actually very surprised to see on the MVP ladder, is Karl Anthony Towns. I mean, I don't know why Karl Anthony Towns is on this list. I can't even lie. I mean, I understand that the Knicks, they're winning a lot, but they were winning a lot last season, and that was without Karl Anthony Towns. I mean, not to say that Karl Anthony Towns' stats are bad. In fact, I mean, you can make an argument that they're even better on the Knicks than they were in his time with the Timberwolves. But I mean, like, you know, his time with the Timberwolves was a little bit meh, you know? 24 points per game this season, 13.6 rebounds per game in this season, all the while shooting 59% on effective field goal percentage, 52% from the field, and 44% from three. Very efficient. I just don't see why he's ranked this high. Again, this Knicks team has the help with Jalen Brunson, and he's also a very competent player that should be getting a little bit more attention. But again, he's not really having as big of a game or like as important big games as Karl Anthony Towns has been having this season. So that's probably why he's not ranked so high in the MVP rankings as of right now. But still, like I just don't see Karl Anthony Towns being ranked this high, especially over a player as gifted and as talented as Luka Doncic. I mean, we already know Luka Doncic and the impact that he has on the Mavs. He is always, and I mean always, an MVP frontrunner. In almost every single poll that I look at to begin the NBA season, everyone thinks that Luka Doncic is going to win the MVP. But of course, Nikola Jokic just says, I am the better foreign player, and just completely breaks that narrative apart. Now, the only way that I can really see Luka Doncic winning an MVP is if the Dallas Mavericks are clear-cut the best team in the Western Conference. That is really the only time that I can see him winning the MVP. With the roster that he has with Kyrie Irving, PJ Washington, he's playing pretty solid at times, and Klay Thompson from here and there, again, arguably, like, I'm not even going to mention Klay Thompson. I scratch that. Klay Thompson has been a little bit more of a liability than he has been of a reliability in these last few games. But Karl Anthony Towns being ranked over someone like Luka Doncic is not something that I necessarily agree with. Again, let me know in the comments what you guys think. It could also have to do with the fact that Luka Doncic is missing a couple of games. But again, in these games that he's missed, it's not like the Mavericks are really like winning all that many games. They did win one game without Luka Doncic, but again, you get rid of Luka on this team and they go nowhere. And the seventh player on this list is Anthony Davis. He was a front runner at the beginning of the season, but of course he ended up just playing bad and started laying eggs. I've said this several times, he is a very frustrating player to watch. It's like he doesn't try to play basketball very well unless he's like bullied or forced into playing well. And it's like, okay, you had these great performances in the first few games, that's all you're getting from me. It's weird. It's incredibly weird, but you know, him being on this list, I don't really have that much of a problem with. It's just really ridiculous how the drop-off was so immense for Anthony Davis. Next player on this list is Donovan Mitchell, best player on the best team in the Eastern Conference. Nothing more that I really need to say about that. His stats are pretty solid, but again, this Cleveland team is also pretty solid, which is a reason why he's ranked so low, because, like, you know, you can probably take Donovan Mitchell off this team, and this Cleveland Cavaliers team would most likely still be a playoff team, especially with how the Bucks have been playing recently. Next player on this list is Victor Wembanyama, a center who I think shoots way too many threes despite being 7'4". But again, this is a really this is like, you know, how should I say this? I feel like him being ranked at number 9, it's just a hype train, honestly. It's really just hype. because, I mean, really, in my opinion, the most valuable asset on this team, aside from Victor, is Chris Paul. I mean, every single time Chris Paul gets added to a team, the team starts winning. And again, I'm not saying that Chris Paul's stats warrant an MVP, but again, there's another player on the team that is impacting wins more so than maybe Victor Wembanyama is. And again, maybe that's just because I think Victor shoots one too many threes, but I don't know. I don't really think he should be that high in the rankings. I just don't think so. But then again, I don't know who else you would put over somebody like Victor Wembanyama. Like, to be perfectly frank here, I don't think there really is anyone that could be over Victor Wembanyama, just because, like, again, not that many impactful players on one team, and it's not really that easy to pinpoint exactly who the top 10 is. But again, so maybe this is just like, they had to pick someone to be in the top 10, and that ended up being Victor. Because while I don't think he should be at number 9, I can't really say that someone else deserves that number 9 spot, if that makes sense. And then finally, at 10 is Trae Young. Trae Young is the only all-star on his team. He is like in the middle of a rebuild era with the Hawks, and it makes sense why he is ranked at number 10, honestly. Not all that great, especially with team record. Very inefficient. But again, there are times where he does get the job done. He scores the ball very well. By far one of the best passing point guards in the NBA, if not the best passing point guard in the NBA right now. He is over Tyrese Halliburton, no question about it. And really, I don't see a problem with him being ranked at number 10 either. I don't see a problem with him being ranked this low. He definitely deserves the consideration for it. And that performance against the Knicks is most likely giving him a little bit of a boost in terms of, now granted, he didn't really play all that well, but he ended up getting the win. And he is also, fun fact, he is the leading scorer at the point guard position in Madison Square Garden with 26 points per game. So the narrative that he is the king of New York, he really does fit that narrative. So that's all that I really have to say on these MVP rankings. Let me know if you guys agree with these MVP rankings. Maybe if you guys disagree with Giannis being ranked at number 2 and think SGA deserves a little bit more respect like me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. But with that out of the way, we're going to go into the 5th and the final segment where we go into NBA predictions and NFL predictions. We're going to cover both of those, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, right after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned. And we are back with the 5th and the final segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this 5th segment, we are going to be doing some predictions of the NBA games that are going to happen over the weekend, as well as the NFL games that are going to happen over the weekend. We are going to do both of them. So we are going to let's start with the NBA first. Might as well, because there are a lot of NBA games that are going to happen over the weekend. I already talked about the college bowl games. If you guys want to check out that segment, you guys can go ahead and check it out on the channel. I already did some predictions on the teams that I think are going to win the bowl games that are not in the college football playoffs, by the way. So just wanted to make that a little bit clear. I'll go into my college football playoff predictions a little bit later, probably next week, when they're actually going to happen around that time. So let's start with the NBA. Lakers, they're going up against the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves are playing at home. I'm not entirely sure if LeBron James is playing, but if he is playing, I'm picking the Lakers. If he's not playing, I'm picking the Timberwolves. I'm going to speed run through all of this because I'm doing both NBA and NFL. Nets and the Grizzlies. I'm going to go with Memphis in this one. Memphis has the home court advantage. They also have Ja Morant. The Nets, they did beat the Memphis Grizzlies while the Nets were at home. But again, I think the Grizzlies, I think they got this one in the bag. 76ers against the Pacers. I'm picking the Pacers in this one. I have no idea if Joel Embiid is playing. I have no idea if Paul George is playing. I have no idea if Tyrese Maxey's playing. Actually, I think Tyrese Maxey is going to be playing. But since Joel Embiid is most likely not going to be playing, I'm going to go ahead and pick the Pacers. Now, if he is playing, I'd probably still pick the Pacers. Not really. I'd pick the 76ers. But next, the Cavs, they're going up against the Wizards. I'm picking the Cavs. That's an easy pick in my opinion. The Hornets going up against the Bulls. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Bulls. I don't think LaMelo Ball is going to be playing in this game. If he was, then I would definitely change my opinion on that. Nuggets against the Clippers. I think I'm going to go with the Clippers. The Clippers, they did beat the Nuggets last time they matched up, so I'm going to go ahead and stick with the Clippers on this one. Suns against the Jazz. I'm not entirely sure if Kevin Durant's playing, but I think the Suns still got it in the bag against the Jazz. And then the Spurs, they're going to go ahead and play against the Trailblazers. I'm picking the Spurs in that one. These are the games that are happening today. The games that are happening tomorrow are the NBA Cup semifinal games, so there's only going to be 2 games. The Hawks are matching up against the Bucks. As much as I don't want to pick the Bucks, I'm going to pick them in this one. They have the home court advantage. Granted, Trae Young could probably break their hearts again. I wouldn't be surprised. And then the Rockets are going to match up against the Thunder. I'm picking the Thunder in this one. I have firm belief in SGA and the rest of that team, despite the fact that this team is incredibly injured. So, well, not incredibly injured. They're really only missing Chet Holmgren, but he's a very, very vital piece to this team. But I'm going to go ahead and pick the Thunder. They've proven that they can win a lot of games without him. And then Sunday, where there's a lot of games, the Knicks are going up against the Magic. I'm picking the Knicks. The Magic, they don't have Franz Wagner and they don't have Paolo Banchero. I think this is the time for the Knicks to capitalize on that. Mavericks going up against the Warriors. I'm going to pick the Mavericks in this one, assuming Luka Doncic plays. Lakers against the Grizzlies. I'm picking the Lakers in this one, assuming LeBron plays. The Pelicans going up against the Pacers. I'm going to go and pick the Pacers in this one because the Pacers play at home. Again, the Pelicans, they aren't injured anymore. I don't think DeJounte Murray, he did play in the last game. CJ McCollum also made a return in a couple of games, so I think that I don't think that's really going to matter against the Pacers though. That's my opinion. Celtics going up against the Wizards. I'm picking the Celtics. Timberwolves against the Spurs. I'm going to actually pick the Spurs in this one. I think that Victor Wembanyama is going to absolutely destroy Rudy Gobert, and I think he's really going to show Rudy Gobert the true power of a French center. And then the Trailblazers are going up against the Suns again. I'm going to... Actually, no, not again. But I'm going to go ahead and pick the Suns regardless because not only do they play at home, but again, it's the Blazers. So not really all that much to it. Now we move on to the NFL. And there is actually 2 games happening on Monday, but we're only going to cover the Sunday games because I'm going to do a preview of the Monday games on Monday. So be sure to tune into the podcast if you're interested in who I'm picking for that. The Giants are going up against the Ravens. Obviously, I'm picking the Ravens. The Giants, they're trying to tank. They're trying to lose. Or whether or not they're trying to win or lose, honestly, they're not good enough to beat a team like the Ravens. Cowboys going up against the Panthers. I am picking the Panthers in this one because you guys already know how I feel about Dallas. And Bryce Young has been playing very, very well. If it wasn't for some unlucky moments, the Panthers in the last 3 weeks could have at least won 2 games. So I'm picking the Panthers in this one. The Jaguars against the Jets, a very, very ugly game. But I'm going to go ahead and pick the... I'm going to go ahead and pick the Jets in this one. That's what I'm going to do. I'm definitely going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Jets in this one because the Jets, they are the Jets. And, I mean, actually, no, that kind of contradicts the whole point. The Jaguars, they have Mac Jones at quarterback, and I don't really trust Mac Jones to do much against the Jets. Again, that could completely backfire on me just given how the Jets season has gone. Commanders going up against the Saints. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Commanders in this one because the Saints, they don't have Derek Carr. I don't think they have Derek Carr. From the last time I checked, I'm pretty sure Derek Carr was injured. But regardless, I don't think they would have won with Derek Carr anyway. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick the Commanders in this one. Jaden Daniels is really that guy. Bengals against the Titans. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Bengals. I think they're going to be able to score enough points. I think the Titans, they're going to start out the game relatively hot, and then they're going to show everyone why they're a 3-10 team after the first quarter maybe. Next, the Chiefs, they're going up against the Browns. Obviously, I'm picking the Chiefs. That's an easy pick. The Dolphins going up against the Texans. This one's a little bit more difficult, but I'm going to go pick the Dolphins in this one. I'm actually going to go pick the Dolphins in this one. I think they have a pretty solid chance to beat the Texans. The Bucs are going up against the Chargers. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Bucs to win in this one. I think this one's going to be a really good game. Steelers going up against the Eagles. This one is also going to be a really good game. And you know what? I'm doing it. I'm picking the Steelers in this one. I would have picked the Eagles, but I don't like the Eagles, so I'm going to go ahead and pick the Steelers. Not only that, but I think the Steelers, despite the fact that they play very, very ugly, they have a very good... They tend to just win games. They always find a way to win games. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the Steelers in this one. They quite recently, actually, last week, they ended up surviving 2 weeks ago, they ended up surviving a shootout between them and the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. So I think and they also ended up scoring 27 points against the Browns after losing to the Browns 24-19 on the 21st of November. So I think the Steelers, they're going to end up winning this game against the Eagles. Next is the Patriots going up against the Cardinals. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Cardinals in this one just because the Patriots, they aren't all that great of a team. Colts going up against the Broncos. That's actually going to be a really good one. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Broncos in this one. And then the Bills going up against the Lions. That's also going to be a very good game. But I think the Lions are going to continue their winning streak. And I think the Bills are going to end up losing this game. Now, I wonder what that's going to do for Josh Allen and his MVP argument, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Bills end up winning this game. But I think the Lions are going to be able to match with their scoring. And then finally, the Packers going up against the Seahawks. I'm going to go ahead and pick Green Bay in this one. Jordan Love has been all right. He hasn't really been phenomenal, but he hasn't been the reason why the Packers have lost games. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the Packers for this one. And those are all my predictions for the games that are happening over the weekend. And that's all that I have for today's segment. That's it for the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And as usual, we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether it's a hot take, a burning question, or just something you're dying to share. We're all ears. If you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, I recommend using Super Chat. Click on the $ below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. Really help the show, make it much more interactive between myself and you guys. And if Super Chat's not really your thing, then you can always use the link displayed below the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net, to send in your comments and or donations that way. That's all that I really have to say on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.